Welcome to Breaking Banks.
Next week is our 500th episode of Breaking Banks over the last 10 years. Brett is going to be embarrassed at the number of people that we had participate when we reached out and said, hey, we want to do some of the best of what's happened over the course of this time. And so he, JP, and I pulled some of our favorite guests that came in. We talked about the bloopers. We have so many messages this week. What we actually want to do is give you a sneak peek of what that episode is going to look like while it's all getting put together, and pulled out some of our absolute favorites. So listen in both this week and next week for the 500th episode of Breaking Banks.
But first, a segment from sister podcast Finovate.
Hey, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. Joining me today, we have Nicholas Balesi's VP of Growth and Partnerships of FinTech Insights. Nicholas, thanks so much for joining me today.
No, it's a pleasure, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so for anybody who's just tuning in, obviously you can go and see the full video of what they demoed on a stage in London at finovate.com/videos. But Nicholas, for those of us who haven't seen it, can you please just start by going through a little bit about what FinTech Insights is all about?
Yeah, of course. So at FinTech Insights, what we do is we provide the industry with a digital banking market research platform that's analyzing the digital offerings of banks, fintechs, and credit unions across the U.S. and worldwide.
Cool. Yeah, no, and for anybody who's actually seen the demo, this might be slightly redundant, but can you get into a little bit more detail on what exactly you mean when you're talking about competitive analysis? You know, what kinds of pieces are you looking at when you're looking at the landscape?
Yeah, definitely. So pretty much through FinTech Insights, what we're analyzing is from A to Z what the banks, fintechs, and credit unions are offering, how they offer it, how well they offer it, all while providing the ability to be able to benchmark against the market and organize your product roadmap to implement your digital banking strategies. So for example, we can see how a Bank of America customer would sign up for an account online, or maybe how a Schwab customer would trade a share of a stock. But again, anything that's being covered there on the retail side of banking, we are capturing and analyzing from A to Z.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive tool based on the demo that you were able to deliver there in terms of the number of things that you look at. Do you have a sense of, you know, how many different kind of touch points you guys can actually go and analyze? I mean, obviously some of the big ones that you just talked about, customer onboarding, how you conduct a transaction, but how deep are you able to go here?
I'd say there's something about around 500,000 different individual user journeys that we could see within the platform. And those are constantly being added to as we're adding new institutions into the platform.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty impressive. So, obviously, most of the banks that are engaging with you, I'm sure, are doing so because they're conscious that they want to be competitive in the landscape. They want to be able to make sure that they're not falling behind. How do you build in the flexibility for those who maybe come in and find out that they're sort of way ahead of the curve? You know, they're already in that kind of top 10%, or maybe more likely is the opposite side where they kind of log in and say, "Oh my God, we're really far behind all of our competitors."
Yeah, so let's sort of clear the air on it. Really, all the banks, fintechs, and credit unions who we engage with, they're really committed and invested in enhancing their digital banking offerings. Really, that's the biggest qualifier here. They're looking to make their product development process faster, and they're looking to reduce the risk during this process. So, starting with some of the banks, let's say, that are behind, first, what they have to really do is understand what they have to achieve for market parity first and foremost. And they got to do this without having to redesign what they've already sort of released out there. After they've accomplished this, then they can start to begin to differentiate themselves after that parity has been achieved. The innovators, though, it's a little bit of a different approach. Really, what they have to do is quickly uncover those unmet customer needs, where any of those potential market gaps are. And with the state of through FinTech Insights, it's really allowing them to get to market with these products faster, and they're also really de-risking that whole process. Releasing sort of a substandard feature that's supposedly innovative, that's already really been solved for or addressed by the market, can become a death sentence. I always like to say first impressions are everything. Even if you're leading the market and leading the pack, the stakes are high, and someone's always going to be nipping at your heels. So you really have to differentiate in terms of your features and your experience.
Yeah, I mean, the product sort of assumes this, competitive landscape, which of course is the reality that, companies are competing for customer attention. They're competing to offer the best customer experience. Have you ever had it where somebody comes in and thinks to themselves, "Oh my God, we're so far behind that we don't even think it's worth trying anymore"? I mean, is that something that you've seen people who are kind of that discouraged by it, or are there things that you can do to kind of help soften that blow or help kind of lay out a path to, here's how you can actually recover this situation?
Yeah, so I really think the great thing is that the individuals, again, that we're engaged with, they've really made that effort and commitment to say that we're going to go ahead and make a change. We do have tools within the platform to be able to achieve this easier as well. Something that we can do is really segment for portions of the market. Let's say we want to achieve parity with 90 to 100% of the market. We can see exactly what features are being offered by that 90 to 100%, and we can sort of work our way down. Let's say we want to go 80 to 100% of the market now. So they can take it step by step. They don't have to go all at once. They can focus on what's most important to implement and then kind of take their way down from there.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool piece. So, I'd like to get into kind of the support that you offer when it comes to actually engaging with some of the solutions. You're talking about de-risking some of the innovations and the engagement with some of those new technologies. Can you expand on that a little bit and talk about how you're able to kind of take some of that risk out of the equation?
Yeah, so really by seeing exactly how other real banking institutions, credit unions, fintechs have implemented a particular vendor technology live, it gives them that sense that, okay, this is what's achievable. This is what it's going to look like. This is what the feel might be. It's going to improve decision making. And at the end of the day, right, what's happening is a lot of individuals might be out there developing blind. They release that feature to the market. It's already obsolete and there's really no engagement. That's going to go ahead and push the product roadmap back because they've got to bring that right back to the drawing table and restart. What we're able to do is make sure that through this benchmarking, through this research, they can see what they're releasing is already going to be a top-notch feature, and it keeps that product roadmap chugging along and allows them to maybe even implement more features that they want to release in terms of their strategy because they have the time for it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those really cool pieces. Now, I want to be clear on something because you're not actually recommending specific companies to engage with, right? You don't necessarily have a dog in that fight. You're just sort of saying, this is how somebody else is doing it. Here's what you want to think about doing if you want to be competitive with them. But do you actually engage with fintechs at all, or recommend specific companies to the companies, to the banks that you're working with?
So it's a great question. I think that the best thing for us to do is be able to point to the objective data. If they have a question for us and they want to say, okay, well, we're looking at particular implementations that we may want to go in and evaluate, we're going to point them in the right direction and show them this is how it's been implemented by X, Y, and Z. We do work with many providers as well, so we don't want to, let's say, throw our hat in the ring in there. We want to give them the objective data to make those decisions for their own personal strategies.
Yeah, no, that makes sense as well. So in looking at kind of the innovation ecosystem, the fintech innovation ecosystem, how do you engage with that side of the community? Or is it something which you kind of just are willing to sort of wait and see what they will kind of spit out, what other companies, what other banks are looking at and saying, we've adopted this one? Because the question, I think, really comes down to, obviously, benchmarking yourself against what your competitors are doing is really useful and really important. But it does mean that there's never that sort of push outside of what's been done before, right? The sort of outside the box thinking. And I think there's obviously bankers have the reputation for not necessarily wanting to go first with a new piece of technology, but there are significant rewards for those companies who kind of take that chance sometimes and say, we're going to try something that's never been done before. How does FinTech Insights account for that, that kind of out there idea that nobody's currently engaging with?
Yeah, so going back to what we said about segmenting with portions of the market to achieve parity, we also have that same ability to go and understand what's the niche offering within the marketplace. So the same way that we segmented, let's say, 75 to 100% of our market to see what's offered, we can see what does only a quarter of this marketplace implement live. And then from there, you can start to pick and choose based on member or customer feedback, trends that you've analyzed, or again, just that digital strategy that the bank or credit union has internally on what sort of features they want to bring to the customers and members. So they can quickly identify all of those innovative and niche features out there right through the platform.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece as well. So I'm curious about the response that you got. Obviously, you resonated really well with the audience there in London up on that stage. They really liked what you were showing them. What kind of response did you get at the booth, when you're actually talking to some of the banks who were there, were you finding that a lot of them were really interested and engaged with what you had to say? Were a lot of them kind of willing to take the test, so to speak, and see where they stacked up?
I think the first thing that we saw was a lot of wide eyes. And that was especially because just understanding that this kind of data does exist out there, especially on an international sort of banking level. There's a lot of innovators across the globe, from some of the larger banking institutions to a lot of these challengers and neobanks. And getting your eyes on those innovative features sometimes can be difficult. So I think there's a lot of traction in just saying, hey, I really want to see exactly what XYZ competitor or XYZ innovators doing, because I haven't had that vision into that just yet. So I think expanding that knowledge base is something that the digital banking community is always looking to achieve and do, and we sort of sparked that interest there with our demonstration.
How are the banks looking? I mean, based on what you've seen, the ones you come up there, are they, and this is where you get into maybe some discussions about sort of regional pride, how I think anybody in the fintech space will tell you that their own region is light years ahead of everybody else, whether they're coming from North America or from Europe or from Asia or from elsewhere. And so how were the banks that you were able to connect with and kind of put through the system, how are they stacking up?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question here, and it's funny because just the perspective that, let's say, across the pond is had about the U.S. Or North American banking versus the European, UK sort of banking side. I would say that definitely a lot of the innovations are coming from the European side. There's a lot of challenger banks, obviously, individuals like Revolut N26 who've made big pushes into the European market are driving a lot of innovation in terms of features, ability to open accounts, getting money cross borders and so on. And I think that the US side is seeing that. Their fintech space is niche, and they have some really powerful players there. But in terms of from the banking side, I think that the, let's say, high street and legacy banks in the US can learn a lot from those challengers out in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but that kind of lines up with my expectation. Unfortunately, I think that there are certainly, we've been aware at Finovate Europe for a number of years now of some of the really cool things that are happening and some of the ways that customers are being engaged and some of the new offerings. And there's some really fun stuff that's out there. So I think there maybe is a little bit of a challenge. And I would encourage anybody coming from, well, obviously from a European bank as well, but from an American bank to engage with FinTech Insights and sort of see how far ahead some of those competitors are, and also see what are some of the quick wins that you could potentially come in and get right away. So I'd like to end the conversation by kind of zooming out a little bit. Obviously, we're talked a lot about the competitive landscape here. How do you think that competitive landscape is going to unfold from here? We've got so many challengers, so many people kind of pushing each other, which is really great. But at some point, will we get to a place where we'll see, kind of a feature consolidation where everybody's really offering the same kind of services with just slightly different logos or slightly different processes? Or will we kind of see a continuation of the current track that we're on, where you kind of have these technology haves and technology have-nots? What's your view on kind of how the landscape will unfold from here?
Yeah, so I really think the big bet for something like this is I guess really increasing the customer engagement and stickiness. Largest challenge really here is how to fully serve your customers, not only their financial needs, but how to really prevent them from needing to go elsewhere to be fully served digitally. We've really seen this trend starting out in Asia of super apps, really combining merchant services, banking features, social media, communications, all under one platform. And there's only really so much wallet share to go around. So the big players are going to have to make a decision. They really are going to either continue hemorrhaging wallet share, or they're going to start consolidating that fintech space and bringing them under their wing. And I guess we've already seen a little bit of movement happening here in the West with talks, even Elon trying to revive his dream of X.com through Twitter. Looks like that roadmap forward might be more capabilities inside of one space for the customer to go to.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really interesting to watch, because, and I think it's important, and a lot of people recognize this, but it really is a dramatically shifting landscape right now. It's an increasingly competitive landscape. And there are challengers coming not only from inside the financial industry, but from outside as well. And so it really is important to make sure that you are aware of what's out there. And it's, again, really clear to see why your demo resonated so well with our audience in London. Well, again, go on to finovate.com/videos. You can find the FinTech Insights by Scientia demo from London. Check out and see those full 7 minutes yourselves. Nicholas, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with me today. It's been a real pleasure watching this technology unfold, and congratulations on that Best of Show win.
Appreciate it, Greg, and it's always a pleasure meeting and chatting with you.
This show is brought to you by Alloy Labs. As much as we love talking on the show, we believe that action is more valuable than talk. Alloy Labs is the industry leader in helping fearless bankers drive exponential growth through collaboration, exclusive partnerships, and powerful network effects that give them an unfair advantage. Learn more at alloylabs.com. Alloy Labs, banking unbound.
Breaking Banks, you merit the #1 award for the ultramarathon of FinTech podcasts. 10 years and 500 episodes. Nobody else has done it. Plus, you are the only podcast that is both multi-host and multi-guest. I love that unique format. I love the fact that you're a bit retro. You have a radio show. Nobody else does. It's broadcast every Thursday on Voice of America. And at the same time, you're always a tad provocative. I love the dose of wittiness and humor and being punchy and provocative in your episodes. These 10 years, I've watched you the last 8 years very closely. I'll never forget the launch of Breaking Banks Europe. Participated twice. It was a delight. And the only thing that I think is ahead, and I await, is some accessory from Breaking Banks. What do I imagine? I imagine a collaboration with an eyewear brand to launch frames for glasses that are branded Breaking Banks. And then I'll be first in line for that frame to see the world through your eyes.
Breaking Banks, 500 episodes. I cannot believe it. Congratulations, guys, on everything that you have done. And for the next 500 episodes and more, I'm sure it will continue to be as fabulous as always. I still remember the first time that Brett asked me to come on the show quite a few years ago now. I think we were talking about longevity and fintech. It was such an amazing feeling, and it is still an amazing feeling every time when I get to come back on it and talk to you all. So congratulations once again. Happy 500, and here's to many, many more 500 to come.
The first time I've heard of Breaking Banks corresponds to the first time that I used Twitter. It was May 2015. I was in New York with a friend, April Rudin, and she taught me how to use Twitter. So I just made my first tweet. And a colleague picked it up saying, are you in New York? I said, yes, I am. Where are you? And he said, well, I'm going to listen to Brett King, the host of Breaking Banks podcast. So I said, okay, I'm coming. That's when I met Brett King the first time. 2 months after, I was on his show and had my story that was central to one of my books, FinTech Innovation. The title was My iPod Was a Robo-Advisor, that I had the chance to explain also to Steve Wozniak when I met him a few years afterwards. And ever since I've been listening to Breaking Banks, many people ask me, I had the chance of becoming a co-host of Breaking Banks Europe. So sitting on the other side of the microphone, listening to people's opinions that we broadcast everywhere in the world. So it is with great emotion that I share this message to basically celebrate the 500th episode of Breaking Banks podcast, the number one podcast in the world.
I'm Spiros Megaris of Megaris Ventures. I would like to say a few words about Breaking Banks and Brett King. It's a fantastic show, probably the leader in its space globally for almost 10 years. I listen to it a lot whenever I can. I gain a lot of insights from the fantastic guests on his show that share generously their knowledge. It made me a better investor in the fintech space and in general through listen to those guests and to listen what Brett had to say. I want to thank Brett King and his team for having provided us with so much knowledge on banking, financial services, on AI, on fintech, primarily on fintech, but all plays into one. Thanks again for having me. Thanks again for having us all. And thanks for sharing this platform to all of us to listen and become more knowledgeable in the process. Spiros Megaris.
Hey there, everyone. This is John Best. I'm the host of The Big Cast, which is a podcast about fintech stuff, author of Breaking Digital Gridlock, and the CEO of Best Innovation Group. But today, I've got the honor and privilege to be part of a significant milestone. We're here to celebrate a remarkable achievement in the world of fintech and banking. I remember talking to Brett about his program, Breaking Banks, all those years ago, and what he wanted to do with it. What he said was he wanted to disrupt the way we talk about, think about, and handle banking. Today, as we commemorate the 500th episode of this groundbreaking show, it's clear he's done just that. Banking is a field that's pretty resistant to change, but Brett, he's been a trailblazer, sparking critical conversations about the future of finance and ensuring that the industry never stops moving forward. As a matter of fact, at most financial institutions that we work with here at Big, his books are required reading. His impact has been nothing short of transformative. The journey so far for me has been enlightening. Being part of the show, being a friend of Brett's, even getting to co-host some of the shows is always an enriching experience. So here's to Brett King, a man who's not just breaking banks, but breaking barriers and leading the charge towards a future of finance that's more open, inclusive, and of course, innovative. Brett, congratulations on this amazing milestone. And here's to 500 more episodes of Breaking Banks. Keep pushing, keep questioning, and of course, keep those books coming. This is John Best signing off. Until next time, folks, stay disruptive.
This is best-selling science fiction author and futurist Kevin J. Anderson with a hearty round of congratulations to 10 years and 500 episodes of Breaking Banks. That's more stability than any financial market I know. Breaking Banks and its irrepressible host, Brett King, has always been imaginative, thought-provoking, serious, frightening, entertaining, sometimes opinionated, always insightful. Brett likes to tackle big ideas with his guests and follow them to the next consequence and the next. His ability to see the big picture, with its attendant warnings and reassurances, has been key to broader understanding of trends and the future of finance from a worldwide perspective. Once again, Brett, hearty congratulations.
Hi, this is Vincent Bach, Head of Marketing at FIS. I wanted to offer my congratulations to Brett King and the Breaking Banks team. Early in my career, if I wanted to learn more or get inspired about a fintech topic, I'd turn to Breaking Banks. When others got inspired and wanted to share that spark, they'd send me a link to Breaking Banks. Breaking Banks created the spark that lit 1,000 fires in the world of fintech. There isn't a startup or innovation idea that can't be traced to some idea seeded by Brett, the topics he covered, and the conversation he has had over the last 500 episodes. Congratulations to the entire Breaking Banks team. 500 episodes is a milestone everyone would envy. And now, you're not just the spark. You have become a cornerstone of the industry. Wishing you and your team the same fortune for the next 500 episodes.
Hey, this is Costa Peric, Deputy Director for Financial Services for the Poor at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Brett King and I are partners in innovation since 2008. And since then, I've been keeping in touch with him through the Breaking Banks podcast that I follow religiously because it is the source, one of the prime sources of, if you want to learn about what's innovative and what's coming up in financial services. Be it from, going from the bare metal payments all the way to quite evolved financial services and insurance services. I've been also using the show as an incubator for ideas. Brett and I chatted at several occasions about some ideas in the scope of financial inclusion, and he was kind enough to air these ideas and put together panels of great people to talk about it. And truly, it was impactful for me and helpful for me to very quickly gather expert advice on how I should go about it. So for me, Breaking Banks over the years not only has been a source of, to keep track of innovation, but really almost like an incubator for some of my ideas. So for that, thank you, Brett and team. Congratulations on the 500. And I wish there is many more to come.
Congratulations to Brett King and Breaking Banks on episode number 500. Brett has been transforming the banking industry for more than a decade now, and in that time, Breaking Banks has gone from strength to strength. Here's looking forward to another 500 episodes, Brett.
Breaking Banks, congratulations on your 500th episode. There's nothing better, and I hear about Breaking Banks everywhere, even when I'm talking to fintech fans in Shanghai. Hey, look. One of the things that I remember best is doing an episode with you guys about the digital yuan. And you know what your guys had me do? I had to go out on the street and get background audio recordings all of Shanghai. It was a blowout. So congratulations on the 500th episode, and I hope for 500 more.
Wow, 500 Breaking Banks. What can I say? Happy birthday. Chloe James here, Group Director of Media and Comms for specialist data-driven financial services insights provider RFI Global. Check us out. Also, former Sky News anchor and love a stage. Think Money 2020, Finovate, Cybos, Inner Tribe, Singapore FinTech Festival. Really honoured for the call up to share some of my feelings about Breaking Banks at this fantastic milestone. It's such an awesome fintech-focused radio show and podcast, the inaugural, before so many have followed in its footsteps. Breaking Banks really hits the heart of what it's all about to me. It's carefully thought out conversations, controversial, it's honest, it's so authentic, real, raw, fun. We have a lot of fun. Insightful, it challenges the norm. It's been a platform for so many to talk about change and the need for change. A focus on the customer, the industry, traditional, emerging, and now emerged, and how they all play in the space. The COVID years and what that did for banking and for fintech and for life, and the unstoppable acceleration of digital in all its forms. A couple of anecdotes I wanted to share. The first time I saw Brett, as I mentioned a few years later on stage in Singapore while I was interviewing him, was in about 2016 in Vegas. He walked past me, was recognisable by that signature raised eyebrow and awesome trainers, and I was too nervous to say hi. We did then connect, and I realised that he was super down to earth with a steely-eyed focus on creating great content in the fintech space. He and Breaking Banks were there on the cusp of its boom. I was lucky enough to become a co-host along with some awesome peers and now friends I've met via Brett. Co-hosted with Jason Henrichs, JP Nicols, Lita Gliptis, Dave Birch, and Jim Maroose, a great friend of mine and my husband's, who they have a football-baseball thing going on. Highlights are interviewing the likes of John Hope Bryant from Operation Hope. I loved chatting with him. Sam Kilmer at Cornerstone Advisors, such an incredible guy. James Robert Lay, author of Banking on Digital Growth. James Robert Lay was incredible, such a forward-thinking individual. Through Breaking Banks, I have met such interesting people, and it's been a real honour. On a personal note, highlights are Brett and his wonderful wife, Katie, flying overnight from a speaking gig in Portugal, I believe, to head immediately up to Canadian cottage country for my wedding in 2019. I think they were in Toronto for about 15 hours. And a month or so later, inviting me to co-host the 300th episode with my 1-month-old baby daughter sleeping in my arms as I hosted. I love Brett's completely equal support of fintech, family, business, and life. And I really wanted to share that having the support of Brett and the Breaking Banks team has just always been incredible. So here's cheers to the next 500. I can't wait to hear what we're chatting about then. Thanks, Brett.
500 shows. Let's give the team at Provoke and Brett a big congratulations for making it a reality. Well done, Brett, and well done team at Provoke. We talked a little bit about what's happened in the last 10 years in the first episode of the current season of Breaking Banks Asia. There's been a lot of change, a lot of different economic crises, the emergence of fintechs. But we also kind of build that episode as the more things change, the more they stay the same, meaning the fundamentals of banking haven't really changed that much in that time. So at every stage, we see this innovation round, things like peer-to-peer lending early on and now through to crypto. And with each wave of innovation comes regulation and then a shift in the playing field where sometimes the big banks still stay on top. But I think in the 10 years that Breaking Banks has been running, ultimately what customers can expect from banking has fundamentally changed. So it was Brett that was among the first pointing out that we'd all be doing our banking via a mobile device back when banks were still spending big dollars on branches and concierges and talking about that's where the service would be. So Simon, how do you think Breaking Banks helped shape the financial services world we have today?
Yeah, great question. I was at NAB and then later I worked at ANZ and CBA when Brett was starting off to grow Breaking Banks. It was an inspired name. It was a bit controversial and even provocative at the time. I didn't realise actually the connection to Provoke FM until this very moment. But 10 years on, I realised that the idea that banking could be done without a branch was pretty radical at the time. I remember the conversations being had at NAB when I was there. It polarised many people, and everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some agreed, some didn't. Some couldn't even see this as something that could happen. It was just too big and too radical a shift. But I think after that and what happened with mobile banking, at first eclipsing the web and then ultimately replacing branches for most things, Brett and his team definitely started to get people's attention. People then immediately started asking, what do you see next? And this in itself, I think, was a significant milestone for Breaking Banks. The other thing, of course, is Brett's work in Movin and Breaking Banks' ongoing coverage of the other fintechs like Bank Simple and others. It's spawned a healthy copycat business in digital banking. And there was always going to be a race to copy or adapt the innovations that were coming out of those emerging platforms into mainstream banking. And of course, this is something that continues to this day.
Yeah, and all along the way, it's been Brett and the team at Provoke that have really been pushing the envelope and talking about, what's coming next, right through to, their futurist podcast now, Brett's latest book, The Rise of Techno-Socialism. This idea that, we're really on the cusp of an AI being able to tell us what we need from a financial services point of view, and certainly big data and machine learning already pricing products like insurance and, playing a big role in banking over time. And we've also got this huge emerging carbon market. So, about to talk about this on the next issue of Breaking Banks Asia. India, the most populous country in the world, about to, jump into the carbon market world. And fintechs and banks having to play a role there, and continuing this idea of Southeast Asia where we've got this huge unbanked population which continues to drive a lot of innovation, a lot of rapid change in the sector. So I guess, Simon, will Asia lead the next decade of change, do you think?
Look, undeniably, Asia already has in many ways. Ant Financial, the building of a complete social media-enabled financial ecosystem, bringing game mechanics into banking. It was an experiment at an extraordinary scale that continues to evolve. The adoption of DeFi, Bitcoin, smart contracts in Asia, I think is going to be a really exciting thing to watch. And of course, AI-enabled financial services to improve returns and also improve the lives of billions of people across India, China, and the wider region. It's got enormous potential at a social, economic, and a wider political level. I think there's plenty to keep an eye on across the landscape. Asia is enormously diverse, with mature, established economies butting up against much more dynamic and, dare I say it, less regulated environments. I'm thinking of our recent show on Myanmar in particular. This diversity does create a real crucible within which a lot of ideas are getting explored, refined, sifted. I think it's a near certainty that some of these are going to emerge as the future of financial services.
That's it for this week. If you like the show, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, or share it with a friend, or share it on social media.
We'll see you again next week with more Breaking Banks.